Welcome back to another episode of Seek Bytes. We are joined once again by Jahred Hope today, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff. React, do you like it? Do you hate it? How does Seek handle front ends? What are some of the problems that we have? How do we manage dependencies? Stick around for more.
Jahred, you're not just a brain full of front end, you're a person as well. So I wanted to ask, how'd you get into this role? How'd you become an EM? How'd you get into, why front end as well?
I wasn't always front end. I started actually my career doing C++. It was really exciting. I enjoyed writing C++ and working on hard problems. And then I wrote a little bit of UI. I started in a company where I had to write a little bit more UI, and I added a little animation to a drop-down, and people were like, oh my God, that's amazing. But I just added a little CSS animation. That's not... The gratification you got working in the front end, so much better. I was like, wow, I actually get to impress people. So I was hooked on building UIs after that. And that sort of started my journey towards front end. I joined Seek primarily focused on front end, and I actually moved between multiple teams, multiple product teams who were all doing different things, had very, very unique parts of their product, things that they were trying to solve, unique people. They were very unique teams, but they had a lot of common problems that they were solving. And so there was a lot of need to just create generic solutions to those problems. And the team I'm in now, Frontend Practices, was formed from exactly that. Engineers stepping up and saying, I found a common problem. Like everyone's trying to do static site generation. What if we solved this generically so that everyone could kind of benefit from it? And just going away and building that thing. So the team was formed to invest in the people who were already doing that. And then it grew by finding people who want to find those common problems, build generic solutions, and building up that team of centralized engineers. So I joined Frontend Practices as an engineer. We didn't have a manager at the time. We needed a manager. I said yes. It wasn't necessarily a goal in life to become a manager, but it's an amazing team. So having the opportunity to manage such an amazing team of engineers is a real privilege, more than it was necessarily a career goal.
And how often are you on the tools? Because I always hear that EMs, and I guess higher up you get less on the tools, less writing code. How often do you get to do that?
Very dependent week by week. I'd probably say I average 30 to 40% of the time on tools.
That sounds very good though.
I kind of would have assumed the amount would have been less than 10. I don't know if I've worked with an EM yet who still writes code, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, no, for sure.
To hear 30%, I know some staff engineers who don't spend 30% of their time writing code.
There's a few structures that we put in place, a very flat structure. The team is a team of engineers working on engineering problems. Because of that, they're usually more aware of the problems that they're trying to solve, as they're also they build UIs, so they're familiar with the solutions that they're building. We do a lot of owning our own product management, so we're kind of our own product managers. We understand the needs of our problems, so we kind of take on the BA within the engineering kind of role. And so what that means is that the team's fairly flat, fairly self-governing. There's not a huge amount of need for a manager, none at all, but
we still need you. They still need you.
People management still has to happen.
Yeah,
makes
absolutely.
Sense. I want to come back to something that you mentioned before, meetups. Now, I know that you've been to a few meetups before and you've actually spoken, so you've been either a keynote for the event or you've been one of the contributors. I haven't actually had a chance to attend any of the ones that you've been at, but how do you find Seek attending meetups? Is that a common thing for people at Seek to go out and talk at conferences and meetups and other things, or is this quite a front-end practices thing?
It's certainly not a requirement to go to meetups working at Seek. There is a bit of a culture around it. I wouldn't say it's a universal culture. It's a little bit office by office and maybe team by team, but I regularly attend meetups and find other Seekers there, and it's usually very interesting times to go and talk to other Seekers in the rest of the business and hearing what they're doing. I joined Seek primarily. I found out about Seek as an option by going to meetups. I can't remember the topic of the meetup, but they were presenting our smarter search and our sort of AI-powered search. This was, over 8 years ago when we were doing AI-powered search, which was pretty exciting at the time, as you can imagine. Going to one meetup and hearing about seekers doing awesome things there, and then going to another meetup and hearing about how we were doing React and SSR and design systems. So, no, I found out about Seek by meeting seekers at meetups.
What topics have you presented before?
I do a lot of I do fun topics, so they're usually more just something I have found interesting, and I hope other people find interesting. Did a recent one on drawing rock paper scissors games, sort of what do you call it, 0-player games on Canvas. Just because I was having fun rendering things on Canvas, and it was pretty fun to watch some rock paper scissors play out.
0-player games. So you just mean it was automated? It just played itself?
Yeah. 0-player games is a category of game. The genesis of it comes from a game called Game of Life, where the little sort of dots sort of turn on and off based on what's around them. And so it's a deterministic game depending on the input, because there's no player input, but it still feels and looks like a game, just it's kind of playing itself.
Interesting. That's cool.
I've never heard the term before, 0-player game, but when you said Game of Life, I was like, wow, I remember a life board game. But then there was the thing at uni I did, I would have called it more of a simulation, but yeah, 0-player game makes sense. Ours was a fish and shark thing. So it was like the fish would try and breed, and then the shark would eat the fish, and it was this like little ecosystem, and you could kind of like tweak the values, and then it would just sit there rendering away.
Yeah, they are. They're simulations. I find them really great as sort of like coding challenges, as fun little projects. Simulations are a great way to learn programming in a way that's really fun, because you tweak a small value and you just see how everything reacts and
Reacts? Oh, okay, it had to happen. Sorry.
Did you do it in React? You said Canvas.
Yeah, Canvas.
In that case, no, I was using vanilla because it was more of a tutorial on how to interact with Canvas. So it was very zero dependencies and more about like how do you calculate these things without a library.
So library and dependencies, you've really hit on a point there. The amount of work required to maintain packages and dependencies really does tend to get out of hand once you start scaling, especially say if you're doing micro front ends, one package bumps and now you have to go and update 40 repos. That's a lot of work. So how do you think that problem has kind of got out of hand with NPM and dependencies and blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, I suppose firstly I would acknowledge that I think we've made it a bit hard for ourselves in that we have quite a few applications. And so you're right, one change maybe might be 40 or 50 PRs for us. As I said sort of earlier, we've invested heavily in solutions around making that as easy as possible whilst allowing us to scale out our applications. So we've got our own custom internal tool that reports on dependencies and how up-to-date you are, called Upkeep, helping you upkeep your dependencies. We got on very early onto Renovate. So we sort of have the Seek configuration for Renovate and automating dependency management. So it is hard, and it's even particularly hard at Seek, but that gave us all the more reason to create very mature processes and practices around keeping our dependencies up to date. But as to it being a problem sort of in general, I think I want to go back to just how proud and excited I am that that is a problem that we have, that so much of our code is in the open, that people are finding security vulnerabilities in this open source code that are getting fixed quickly, and so you're having to constantly update. The fact that we've got such a composition-based ecosystem that you have dependencies that has dependencies that have dependencies is all the result of having an amazing ecosystem of engineers building cool things and evolving very quickly. So whilst it has a cost, it's a pretty exciting cost to bear.
So the benefit outweighs the cost.
Absolutely.
We've been talking a lot about front-end, but I mean, really, your team it focuses on tools that help supplement, I feel like. What's it like working on stuff like that really supplements front-end rather than actually being a front-end tool?
We have a solution that supports sort of the runtime concerns of what we call the web platform, and that sort of takes the request coming into our core domain and tries to understand it. The core of that solution is what we call a model, or the model of our core websites. And that model is really just based on the idea that a team can say, hey, we exist as a team. We have an application. It like these routes. It's this type of application. Can we please run on the web platform? That is going to mean that obviously we'll mount up those routes because we have opinions about how you do languages. Then we'll give you the routes for that. We'll do sort of common things like / normalization and sort of general standardization patterns. That solution runs then and accepts requests coming into the SEEK website and distributes it appropriately. The exciting thing about that is the whole story there was the predecessor to that solution was a really powerful solution using Nginx ran by our networking team. That networking team was a team of really amazing experts in networking, really amazing experts in running these important centralized solutions for Nginx. They were a team that understood Nginx config. What we built was saying, what if we took the modeling of our SEEK website and gave it to front-end developers? Because ultimately, it's the front-end developers who care most about that area. So the exciting opportunity there was leveraging serverless and things like Cloudflare to allow us to run to hand over that kind of modeling of our website and our web platform and what requests are coming in and give it to the engineers who maybe don't have as much of a background in hosting backend services, but really love and think about web. And so that was a big win for us, was sort of still being enabled by that networking team that still exists, but are focusing more on the networking of how to get to these services and then allowing the team to focus on front end. And it's just JavaScript. So whether you're writing it in the front end or running it in a worker, it's all kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so less of a front end team, more of a JavaScript. And I don't know.
Kind of the JavaScript platform team, maybe?
Yeah. We'll change it. We'll pitch that one. Yeah.
So my pitch would be experience platforms. Because if you think about everything we do, it's all about the part of the SEEK product that uses experience. And so if I think about it, my mental model is where the experience platform, we care about the experiences that users are getting and allowing SEEK to build great experiences.
Mm-hmm. I guess that makes sense. So the front-end practice really does pigeonhole you a little bit more. Or focus that into we are the front-end experiences, right?
Yeah. No, front-end, I think people sometimes do think we only do the HTML and the CSS. Yes. But no, for us, front-end is probably better described as experience. It's all of those things from what's serving the requests to the actual technology, that the platform that users are using.
So does that also go into how the application kind of gets deployed for how it can be served up as well, or is that a different team?
Absolutely. So we have a core team that understands how do you release things in general? How do you store your code? Those things that are truly common amongst engineering. Our team then takes that platform and thinks about how do you deploy a web application. And so SEEK has invested quite heavily into static site generation. And we have a lot of really cool tools and solutions around static site generation that allow us to, for example, review any version of your application you can access on any environment. Even if it's not the main branch, your default branch, it's not the thing that's going to production, you can go and test it anywhere, which is really great for being able to share and show what you're working on. Those kind of tooling is all enabled by a internal tool we use for deploying our sites, sort of mixed with that model and routing solution to sort of have a common contract.
Yeah, having been one of the consumers of that, I've got to say it is so nice as a thing. Working at other companies, there's definitely been issues with staging where, you have production and staging or production and dev, and that's it. And if two people have a competing branch, it's, whoever deployed last, that's your new dev. Whereas here it's, I can test out my changes in production, I can test them out in staging, or I can just run them locally and...
With UI versioning, right? That's
with the UI versioning. And then, we've got a similar tool for backend, so I can kind of pick and choose what my backend service is and my front end, and then I can verify that, the front end will behave the way it's supposed to in production without actually changing the production website. Quality of life for me is huge. So I love that one.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I hold quite dear is this kind of idea that so many good ideas happen by individuals who just come up with an idea. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for that individual to show people that idea. So that's a fast developer feedback, obviously locally as well, and getting that early feedback. But it's also as quickly as possible getting to the point that, hey, here's a URL. Hey, designer, can you? What do you think of this? I tried changing this around. What do you think? And being able to share that and get feedback outside of engineering is a really critical component in being able to allow everyone's ideas to have a chance to sort of see reality, get into the product, and start providing value to our users.
And just on that, kind of closing the loop there for quality of life, Playroom really helps try and solve that need as well, doesn't it? Because you can basically mimic your React application, right, to a certain extent in Playroom, and you can very quickly spin up that prototype with changes compared to, having to go and actually make the code changes and then commit those, deploy that, and then link it to a designer.
Absolutely. And so Playroom is a solution that allows you to sort of take your design system and compile it together into this kind of prototyping tool, which allows you to use your components and just write React components, of JSX, in the browser. And then it sort of serializes that state, what you've written, into your URL. So once again, you're just sharing and you're linking people on Slack saying, here's an idea. And what I love about that is that conversation when you look at a support thread and someone says, hey, I'm trying to get a little bit of extra space here, but things aren't working how I want, and they link you to their Playroom, and then you reply with a link saying, oh, hey, I tried this, and is this what you wanted? That ability to have a conversation in code by sharing links around of prototyping, it's a great way to facilitate a conversation about code and solutions rather than kind of abstract ideas and not being certain where it's going to go.
I had two small things that I wanted to just touch on real quick. One of them was just about SSR, static site rendering, and that whole space, because those are very different. And we've talked about UI versioning, which I know we certainly have for static sites, but I know that is a little bit more difficult with server-side rendering. So I guess the question is, what are your thoughts on server-side rendering? Do our platforms support that? What do you see the future there being?
One of the reasons why, server-side rendering at SEEK has always been a little bit of we've only needed it in some places, so it hasn't needed as much common support. We're now starting to scale it out. We know that there's so much value in personalizing that initial page load that we want to do it more. The limitation there is that we've done so many good things with static site generation. How do we not compromise on that great developer experience? How do we not compromise on that previews? And so it's kind of a privilege, but also a bit of a pain point. It's like, well, now we need to do better. We need to do as good. I'm glad that we have that high bar to set, but it does mean that as we look to transition to SSR, there's solutions that we're looking at to sort of recreate those UIV, the user version switching behavior. I'm hoping that we can get a best of both worlds. It's probably going to be a hybrid world where we try and spin up your server-rendered experiences behind the scenes. If we can't, we might fall back to a static version, those kinds of solutions, because I don't want to compromise on that developer experience, that preview behaviors, all of those things we've talked about really liking. I want to keep that whilst giving our users a personalized initial load.
Yeah, and it feels like front-end is catching up a little bit with that. React now has client and server components to help with, fix with that. Do you feel that just the front-end in general is trying to catch up more into that server-side rendering?
Absolutely. It's kind of impressive how many things have changed, how quickly. One of the things I'm been very excited about is suspense.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, suspense has made my life thinking about how we dynamically load chunks and dynamically load content so much easier, and just sort of made it more of a part of the platform rather than feeling like, how do I do this with React? It's like, yay, I have React to help me do this.
So what is suspense for those who haven't used it before?
Suspense is the idea that whilst you're rendering out your application, you might reach a point in which your component says, I don't actually have the information or the code or the behavior that I need to finish this render. So I'll stop here and come back to me later. That's a really powerful solution for maybe you have an asynchronous chunk, some separate JavaScript that you've loaded in, but also if you're loading data. And so there's a lot of new models now on start loading data as soon as you know that you're loading a new route. So load your data as soon as possible, but then just start rendering. Start getting as far as you can with your render. And then once the data is there, finish off your render. So it's a really powerful tool to sort of like stop halfway through your render and catch back up once you're ready.
And so that's kind of the equivalent of an early return.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
But instead of doing that, the framework itself is basically giving you that tool out of the box rather than you for each component having to write, if data not ready or if data loading, return loading state. It's just, here's my component wrapped in a suspense block and then fall back to X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, and because it's built into the framework as part of the server render, you can now sort of say, oh, look, hey, I've came back to it, but I still want to put this in the initial render, so sort of put it at the end of the document and mount it up. So it's not just syntactic sugar, it opens up opportunities to improve the experience. And that's just one thing. Like you mentioned React Server components. There's a lot of exciting things being sort of brought in now that I feel like has more transitioned React from being something that, as I was saying, like you can do good things if you put the work into it, to standard practices to do good things, which is an exciting change.
Very much so. Because I, particularly with server-side rendering and stuff, I feel like it being part of the core platform is going to see more adoption with that being the thing. One thing I found interesting with Remix when I tried it, which is another framework, they had these like data loaders to help move things from back in the front end. I found that very cool, and I feel like seeing some of these things come into core React, it needs it. And I think that's the powerful part about React is that people are trying to improve it.
But the powerful part of React is the people working on React.
Is the people working on React. That's exactly right, yeah. Are there any frameworks you really don't like?
No, there's none I don't like. There are ones that I wish I could like, that I wish I could use because I like so much, but I realize or appreciate that they're maybe not the right decision for scale. I love reactive programming, writing observables or signals, really excited about that coming into the JavaScript spec. I'm really excited about that, and I got really excited about MobX early days, and you maybe wrote a few too many decorators before that was standardized. Really loving sort of Solid and a lot of those solutions. I love them. I just appreciate that reactive programming is maybe not the best option for scaling out sort of experiences, just because that debuggability can get a little bit more complicated. I still love it. I don't want to say anything bad about it, but I wish I could use it.
There's one thing you mentioned there, and that's debugging front ends. A lot of people debug front ends by just whacking in console log. What are your opinions on that? Like, should you be using the Chrome debugger, or just console log it and it's fine?
Over time, I've been told, front-end developers don't understand how to debug things. They just put in console logs. Partly that's because it's so really quick and easy. Partly because we have such a fast feedback on compiling your experience. Like back in the day, building Windows applications, compilation, running an executable, it might be 10 minutes for you to sort of stop what you're doing, start the compilation process, load things up, get things to a state where you're seeing your logs.
You're having flashbacks of C++, aren't you?
Yeah, takes me back.
The fact that I can write in a console log and the page just hot reloads that component and I immediately get the console log out, it's not a bad thing that console logging is so easy, so quick. Debugging has its place though, especially writing some of the router code that we've been working on recently. A lot of that kind of code, you want to make sure it's in your tool belt as an engineer, but I wouldn't be ashamed of the fact that you rarely need to reach for it.
It makes it so much easier to actually run a debug. But yeah, for front-end stuff, like a lot of time, you're seeing what's happening on the screen a lot of time. You know, sometimes you don't need to run a debug because your debug is, I'm clicking this drop down, oh, it's empty, there's no results. I feel like it's very different for front-end compared to, and I feel like also the tooling as well. It used to be very hard to run a debug in your like IDE for front-end stuff. Nowadays, VS Code make it very easy.
I'm going to be honest, I rarely attach my IDE to the front end. I used to do it a lot. Whereas with the modern browsers, I find it so easy to debug through them because you can just whack in a breakpoint and not even write a console log to change the thing. I'm just going to have the breakpoint log out the data. It's just so easy to use. Like Firefox's one is good. Edge's one's actually pretty good, but Chrome's, the debugger in that is really cool.
Dev tools are so impressive nowadays. Even on the visual side of things, it's one of the things I love about CSS Grid and even sort of Flexbox and Flexbox Gap is just being able to look at your website in a dev tools these days, you know, versus 10 years ago. It's truly impressive. You just get these nice boxes that show why the margins are where they are. You're going to get the breakdown of the computed styles, and then you, in that same tool, you're jumping over to, as you say, you know, you're selecting an element and saying, hey, you know, breakpoint when this thing changes. That's jumping straight into the code. How interconnected it is, it's a real pleasure to work in a browser these days because of the dev tools.
You mentioned hot reloads too. I remember before hot reloads was a thing, and wow, was that painful. Whereas now, like, you can just make the change and it will just re-render in front of you. Won't reload the page, won't change the state. It just re-renders the component with the new, like, existing state.
It's great. It's still hard to keep supported from a platform. It's very easy to sort of drop support. It's one of the reasons I'm excited for Vite is I think hot reloading has been around for long enough now that it's more embedded into the tools that we're using. But for a long time, hot reloading was something that can we not support it? Because it breaks all the time. And it was hard. It's getting easier now. It's still hard.
When it works, though, so good.
Oh,
so good.
So amazing.
Super useful. We should probably start wrapping up. Final questions. We got to ask you what browser you work on.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. What's your browser of choice?
I mostly use Firefox, mostly because it's sort of got the extensions and the experiences that I like. The dev tools I quite like on it, but every now and again I'll jump over to Chrome for its...
For a holiday.
For profiling. I just find profiling's better in Chrome. Other than that, I prefer the Firefox dev tools.
Yeah, cool.
There you go. That was great. Super fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.